As discussed previously, the skin is an organ and the organ is made up of tissues. I haven't gone into much detail talking about the type of tissues, but just note that the epidermis is going to be made up of epithelial tissue. The dermis has connective tissue in it, areolar connective tissue, etc. And then we have the subcutaneous layer here. This layer is also known as the hypodermis, below the dermis. This subcutaneous layer is called subcutaneous because the skin is known as a cutaneous membrane. Looking at this in a little bit more detail now, we just look and see, well, what's in this subcutaneous membrane? And you can see here that the main tissue found here is adipose tissue, okay? Fat. This is going to be forming a layer of insulation. And in here, we can also take a look at the cutaneous plexus. Remembering that plexus just means a network, and here what it is a network of blood vessels. Okay, so we're going to have our arterial blood going into the skin. Okay, so here we have it right here. It's going to be arterial blood bringing oxygen to the skin, and then we're also going to have deoxygenated blood leaving the skin, and here we have it right here. So what this forms is a network of vessels known as the cutaneous plexus. Remembering that the epidermis is avascular, it is the dermis that is supplying the blood to the dermis itself and to the lower levels of the epidermis. Moving on to the right side of the diagram, the first structure here is the hair shaft. We've already discussed that this is dead keratinized epidermal cells. I just want to refer you to figure 5.4 on page 151 in your textbook. It gives a more detailed view of the skin, and we will discuss that a little bit more in class. But the hair shaft is that portion of the hair that is above the surface of the skin. This, again, noting that these hairs are only found in thin skin, and to look at the difference between thin and thick skin is table 5.4. Here is another plexus, and as we discussed down here with the cutaneous plexus, this is a network, and again, it is a network of blood vessels. The reason it is called a papillary plexus is because it is in the papillary region of the dermis. Again, this is going to be supplying the epidermis with blood. The structure right below this is what's known as a free nerve ending. Again, this is going to be a sensory receptor. It's going to be responsible for pain, tickle, itch, again, close to the surface of the skin, and it will also be sending afferent signals out the sensory nerves, okay, so that it can be processed by the central nervous system. As previously mentioned, the two layers of the skin are the epidermis and the dermis. This diagram does not go into detail about the layers of the epidermis. However, if you refer to figure 5.3 in the text, which is on page 145, and look at table 5.1, it discusses these different layers, and we will do so in class. The dermis has two layers, the papillary region and the reticular region. The papillary region has the dermal papillae, as previously discussed. These two regions have different types of connective tissue. The papillary region has areolar connective tissue, whereas the reticular region has dense, irregular connective tissue. Okay, so different types of connective tissue. The dense connective tissue has collagen fibers for strength within the skin, and also has elastic fibers for extensibility and elasticity. Remembering that the dermis is vascular and is supplying the epidermis with blood. We've already discussed the subcutaneous layer, also known as the hypodermis. It's not a layer of the skin. It has adipose tissue within it for insulation, and it also connects skin to the underlying tissue. The final two structures here are the blood vessels, and we will note here that we have veins, which is going to be carrying deoxygenated blood and waste from the skin, and then we also have arteries, which are going to be carrying oxygenated blood into the skin. We've already noted that there are these cutaneous plexus. Okay, so that is the first network once it gets into the dermis. And then we have the papillary plexus up here. And then we've also looked at the capillary loops here, which are the small capillaries through which oxygen and CO2 exchange is going to occur.